Marlborough Education Services, AS Sociology, Unit 2 Education and Methods, The Role and Purpose of Education. Functionalism. Functionalism is a structural perspective, so it views society as a social system which is made up of complementary and often interrelated multifunctional institutions like the mass media, family, religion, the state, and education. This perspective is highly idealistic and sees only the positive aspects of social institutions. Functionists take the view that if we have something in society like the family or education, then it must be functional or it wouldn't exist. Rather surprisingly, this leads them to say that because we have crime, that must also be functional, but that's something you'll learn about in your A2 course. One of the most important functionalists you should be aware of for your examination is Emil Durkheim. Durkheim can be viewed as one of the founders of sociology and functionalism in particular. He was a supporter of the capitalist system and thought that society we had was the society we should have. So for Durkheim, he didn't want change, he just wanted to maintain the status quo, the way things are. However, he always had a concern about something he referred to as anomie. Anomie is a kind of normlessness, where society has unclear norms and values, and this results in the fracture of the social cement. Social cement is the invisible bonds and ties like shared norms and values that keep society stable and ordered. Only with this stability and clearly shared norms and values could we avoid this undesirable state of anomie. Now, in an agrarian society, and that's one that is based on agriculture rather than industrialisation that came later, you tended not to get anomie because people lived together in small villages, they rarely moved, they shared the same experiences, and religion helped to bind them together to give them a firm sense of belonging. He called this mechanical solidarity. However, once the Industrial Revolution came along and people started to compete against each other for jobs, as they started to experience geographical mobility, and as they started to live in far larger groups like towns and cities, the social cement became much weaker. Durkheim referred to this as organic solidarity, and in any society characterised by organic solidarity, anomie is always more likely or is more of a possibility, because we are bound together by our economic relationships, the jobs we do, not so much by our shared values. Therefore, for Durkheim, the education system had a key role in socialising young people into accepting society's norms and values. Education teaches us to belong. It helps us to be integrated into our society. It promotes social solidarity, so it must be something functional. Durkheim then goes on to talk about how in an agrarian society the division of labour was simple, and as such parents and other relatives could perform the education role within the family. What he means by the division of labour is that different jobs and skills that are required in the economy. So if you have a simple society, a largely undifferentiated economy, the skills you might need could easily be passed on to you by your relatives. However, as industrialisation takes place, and as capitalism becomes more complex, so you get a much more specialised division of labour. So the next function that Durkheim is getting at here is that modern education system is functional because it equips young people with the skills and specialist knowledge they need to work effectively in the economy. Therefore, the education system is also functional because it is responding to the needs of the economy. Durkheim also saw education as an essential stepping stone from the private world of the family to the public world of work and society. He said that in the family, life is based on affective relationships, and these are bound up with love and affection. For example, your parents might give you something because they love you, not because you have worked for it. But for Durkheim, it was important that we soon learn instrumental values like working hard for rewards, because these are the universalistic values that govern our lives when we go out into the world of paid employment. So the education system teaches us to think and act in ways that we will need to when we become independent young adults. Finally, like other functionalists, Durkheim also saw the education system working according to meritocratic principles. Meritocracy is where you are rewarded according to your achievements and abilities, not merely on the basis of who you are, as that tends to be referred to as ascription or ascribed status. So the job you do is related to the skills and abilities you have demonstrated in the education system. So far, some of the concepts that you have learnt about have been structural, anomie, social cement, mechanical solidarity, organic solidarity, agrarian society, industrialization, and meritocracy. Some criticisms of Durkheim will follow. Number 1. Durkheim assumed that there was a shared culture for all young people which would relate to and accept. For example, we have different cultures associated with different social classes, and today we have different ethnic and religious cultures that may not identify with and may not wish to accept the culture that the education system transmits. Number 2. Marxists would argue that the culture Durkheim refers to is in fact the culture of the bourgeoisie, the rich. This is a valid point because no school or college seeks to transmit working class norms and values, working class ways of thinking or of speaking. Number 3. The New Right, the social and economic philosophy that dominated the 1980s, sometimes referred to as Thatcherism, and even New Labour today, have tended to stress the importance of the subjects and the qualifications, not the role of education in teaching particular norms and values. Number 4. Hargreaves, 1982, argues that far from education teaching us to cooperate with each other, teaching us to belong to society, education teaches us to be individualistic and self-centred because of the way we compete with each other for qualifications. Number 5. Functionalists are mistaken in their structural belief that we are the weak and institutions are the strong, that students accept the norms and values and learn to be model citizens. Many reject the values of the school and the instructions of the teachers. Isn't this what we call an anti-school subculture? However, some criticisms of Durkheim are not always entirely fair, because what he said was often an accurate account for the time in which he was writing, namely the late 19th century and the early part of the 20th century.